Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my instant reaction to Reinier winning via split decision versus Robert Whittaker. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. The support has been great so far and I really do appreciate it. It means a lot, and again, thank you to everybody that's joined. There's been plenty of videos that have come from people requesting me to do combat sporting related content, and I mean, so far with my picks, I've had a pretty successful weekend on the way of recording this. So fingers crossed it stays up and I get them all right for this weekend. But yeah, so far so good. Let's speak about this fight though. So Reinier has caused I wouldn't say a shock upset, but a bit of an upset by going out there and beating Robert Whittaker. I mean, of course, Derrida was the up-and-comer, and Robert Whittaker was the former champion who was ranked much higher and was kind of giving Derrida that opportunity. And it was definitely an interesting fight. I think it was a good fight. I think it definitely started off. I think the first 3 rounds were pretty entertaining, and then the final two were very much just a dragging it out, I suppose, to an extent where they're both just exhausted type of fights. But they came into the fight both kind of with their different energies. I mean, Whittaker looked like he was doing his snarl as always, and tried to look like he was coming with an aggressive face and everything like that. And Derrida came in looking very relaxed, very composed, quite stoic to an extent, as he normally does. But when the fight got underway, I mean, it was definitely a good start from Whittaker, with his hand speed causing a lot of problems to Derrida. And anytime Derrida really came in, the like I said, the footwork and the striking ability of Whittaker was just causing him a lot of problems, and Derrida looked very clumsy when he was striking to start off with. Even, had a few of his own takedowns himself, but they were lazy, and Whittaker was able to stuff them quite easily. And so, it was a good start for Whittaker, and I think that filled me with a bit of discomfort. It wasn't that I wasn't rooting for Robert Whittaker. Of course, he's a legend, and he seems like a really lovely guy as well. The way that he carries himself, is very respectable. But of course, Derrida, I was trying to see, that he was worth getting this shot. I didn't want to just see him get blitzed or be dominated just by the hand speed of Whittaker. And then after that bit of a rocky first round where Derrida did get slightly cut, it then improved, and Derrida came into the second round with much more power in his work and was able to land them knees. And I mean, that's seemingly what he's known for now more than anything. I think he showcased the power of his knees more so than his actual wrestling ability in this fight, to be honest. And he also did manage to get a takedown in that second round, but most of the time, he was just dealing a lot of damage through the knees. I suppose when he did get that takedown, he did well to deal damage on the ground with a bit of ground and pound, but at that point, Whittaker was already looking tired, and now at that point as well, Whittaker had his nose busted up, so Derrida had a small cut, and Whittaker had his nose busted up. So again, like I say, at that point, it's a 1-1, and Derrida is kind of more growing into the fight. And then the third round was the kind of great round. That was the most entertaining round, where RDR was hurting Whittaker and kind of came forwards and was about to throw his big knee. And I think if he would have landed that with real intent, I was kind of getting flashbacks to the RDR versus Bo Nickel fight, of course, where he was able to stop him with the knee by just getting him up against the cage and putting it on him. But it seemed like that was about to happen, but all of a sudden Whittaker timed a nice overhand, suddenly dropped him, and then all of a sudden was throwing big shots, trying to get him out of there. And to be fair, I gotta give some level of credit to RDR for surviving that and being able to get out of that, because I think he was hurt quite badly, but it definitely did catch him by surprise. So I don't know if he wasn't out of it, but it definitely did hurt him, and it did, it would have taken a lot to get out of that position. I think due to the fact that Whittaker was already quite tired, I think perhaps that's why he wasn't able to get him out of there, or wasn't able to deal quite enough damage to be able to really, bust him up. But to be fair, for the remainder of the fight, I don't think either of them looked the same after that incident. And then, I mean, to be fair, RDR managed to get up, got a takedown, and was able to hold him down for the remainder of the round, to be honest. So, that, in my opinion, it was a Whittaker round, making it 2-1, in my opinion, at that point. But, still, it was not, that was probably the highlight in which I saw from the rest of the fights. And then from then on, it kind of dulled out a little bit. I mean, it was a less active round in the fourth, with both of them seeming tired. RDR gave up his back, but Whittaker was just too tired to really do anything and capitalise on it. RDR was still just continually throwing his knees, and he was landing a few of them. Again, it looked like it was taking a lot of air out of Whittaker. Whittaker did look much more tired in this contest, just in general, which is, again, perhaps it's down to just the real strength behind these knees. A lot of people were kind of joking and mocking the fact that Bo Nickel was stopped by a knee to the body, but it seems like they really do come with a lot of intent. It's kind of been, called and known as this kind of Dutch kickboxing type style, and I mean, it definitely is working for RDR, and like I say, he is maybe resorting to it a bit too much, but when your opponent's so tired in front of you, any sort of damage is going to be enough, and when you are putting enough force into it, I'm sure it was taking, like I say, a lot of wind out of Whittaker, and I think that probably was able to win him, and to probably win him the whole fight as a whole, to be honest. And I mean, there was a couple of occasions in which RDR did his clumsy boxing, his shots where he was just staggering all over the place, and he did a little overhand and then a spin and then a look up to the clock, and it looked lazy, it looked clumsy, it looked like he wasn't really doing anything of if no, it looked just poor. There was like no setup to some of the boxing in which he was trying to throw, and I mean, it's goofy to an extent, and it's not going to get rid of the kind of cartoonish claims of his style. But in the end, in the fifth round, he had him up against the cage, Whittaker, and he landed better, in my opinion. Well, Whittaker landed better when RDR was coming in, but RDR just pushed him up against the cage, and that was pretty much all he had to do to be able to win the final round. It was a bit of a hugging type final round, but again, they were both knackered, and I'm not really, it was a close fight, definitely, but I think in the end, I did have it 3-2 to RDR. And again, that was actually just because he was holding him up against the cage in the final moments, or the final round in general. And inevitably, like I say, that was enough for him to be able to win. And of course, that is a huge win for his career. Do I think that is a win in which puts him into title contention? I mean, he called for a title shot. Of course he is. Every fighter seems to call for a title shot straight away nowadays. Like I say, I just don't think he's quite ready for a title shot, and he showed a bit in this fight, which was good, but I think he really needs to work on, building into these 5 rounders, and he has to probably be able to deal with another 5 rounders. So I wouldn't mind having him as another fight night main event. So again, perhaps give him an Izzy. Maybe that's feeding Izzy to the powerful body puncher, but at least maybe Izzy striking might be able to cause him issues. Or I mean, Strickland, if Strickland's allowed to fight, I know there's some sort of ban going on with Strickland at the moment because he jumped a cage of a fight that wasn't in the UFC. So maybe if Strickland's able to come back, that could be an interesting one as a little setup before perhaps then him getting a title shot, because I definitely do believe that the middleweight division is a bit queued up at the moment. I think DDP is going to fight Chimaev, of course. Then the winner of that probably will have to fight the winner of Imavov versus Barayo, and I think that just makes sense, to be honest. And I think they probably do deserve it more than that of an RDR. But what I will say is RDR versus DDP will be the definition of a slobber knocker. I don't say that very much. I don't really like the term, but I think that's pretty much the only way in which you could describe what that fight would be. A slugfest, I suppose, as well, as another word in which you could use. And it would just be the most goofiest fight in which you've probably ever seen. But maybe we'll end up seeing that one day. I don't know if that would be a title fight. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if DDP is going to be able to get through Chimaev, but of course we will have to wait and see. Going on, just touch upon the co-main event as well. I mean, it was a good co-main event. It was a good card as a whole, to be honest. I was quite pleased with the card. It had some good moments, and I mean, Petr Yan dominated, in my opinion, against Marcus McGhee to win via unanimous decision. Yeah, I was definitely intrigued to see coming into the fight, my kind of main thought was just that Jan is a fighter who definitely grows into fights, but he is typically now a fighter that's really used to the 5 round distance. So would he have been caught out and, struggled with a 3 round distance, really been able to get into the fight? And of course he wasn't, like I say, he definitely did really well. And I mean, it was a very good start, and in general it was just a pure stand-up boxing kind of display to start off with. I mean, Jan was distributing, again, not boxing, but he was distributing fast leg kicks and then came with some hooks that seemed to, catch McGhee out. You could tell that McGhee hasn't faced a striker like Jan. He hasn't faced anybody of that ability. I think the experience was definitely on show from Jan. He, like I say, was catching him, hitting him strong, and then McGhee wasn't able to deal with that strength that well because, again, like I say, he hasn't had to deal with that so far. McGhee was still hitting strong shots back, and it was a bit of a back and forth definitely to start off with, but Jan did start to get control in the mids of the fight, and then he caught McGhee with a good shot that cut him open as well. And something that I was really impressed with was Jan's tight guard. It was really refreshing to see because a lot of UFC fighters and MMA fighters as a whole don't have a tight guard, and if you want to have a boxing style, it's so beneficial to just have a tight guard. It was really able to nullify a lot of McGhee's work. And I mean, Jan's, when he was throwing, his, I think it was his right hand was glued to his chin the entirety of the time when he was throwing, unless he was throwing that shot, and then he was bringing it back really well as well. It was just, it's such basic fundamentals, but it's so important. And then he was really covering up, and actually, like I say, covering up close, tight. He's not a big frame, so he can cover up the majority of his body and head with just his arms. And like I say, that was something in which, in my opinion, was really able to nullify McGhee from really being able to do anything. And again, at the same time, I don't think McGhee was gaining any confidence, just catching, Jan's guard, and then Jan was able to bait him in a bit doing that and then catch him with his own shots. The final round wasn't really that interesting. I mean, Jan dominated again, kneeing McGhee up against the cage just over and over again. He did mix in a nice couple of inside trips at important moments in which I think McGhee could have maybe had a bit of success, especially that was the second inside trip. McGhee was at a good distance to try and be able to flip the momentum with not much time left in the fight, but then Jan was able to get that trip, and then at the end of that point the fight was pretty much over. And like I say, in my opinion, I had that 3-0 win, which was, like I say, relatively comfortable for Petr. And in my opinion, that was a real dominant performance, and a performance in which could definitely put him into a title shot contention. Of course, the winner of Sandhagen versus Dvalishvili, of course, he's already fought both of them, so again, maybe they might not be wanting to give him an opportunity. But I mean, I know Dvalishvili said at the start of this year he did give Petr as a name in which somebody he would be willing to face. So again, perhaps that could happen. If not, an O'Malley rematch, again, that could be made. Or Nurmagomedov, again, I don't really know what's happening with Nurmagomedov at the moment. There's not really been any talks of him fighting since, of course, what happened with Merab. Obviously, that was a really good competitive first fight between the two of them, but I don't know if they'll be willing to put Nurmagomedov back in against Dvalishvili straight away. And so, again, no other kind of fighters have really called out Nurmagomedov. So if Jan was to fight him, I think that could be a real tough, excellent fight as well, and that would be an interesting matchup. But I do feel at the same time the UFC, I think Petr could make the argument that the UFC owes him something now because he took that fight against McGhee, in which, was a big moment and an important card. Of course, Abu Dhabi is going to be an important card for the UFC because that's where they're going to get a lot of money. So for him to invite somebody up like a McGhee to give the opportunity to them to co-main event on a big slot, again, you kind of have to say that they might kind of owe him something, so it wouldn't surprise me if he gets the winner of Sandhagen versus Dvalishvili, which, like I say, I don't mind at all. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.